that had happened in our community. I understand. I'm just explaining my shakiness this morning. Dogs are a vital part of our community, from working dogs on farms to just a companion, to working dogs in nursing homes. There's also different legislation that needs to be taken into account with what you're looking at here. That is also the Guide Dog Provision Act and also the Companion Animal Act of Australia, providing services to people like me who suffer with PTSD. All dog owners need to be responsible for their animals. I take my hat off that Bruce, you've raised this with council. The holiday parks have a restriction on animals during high periods. Please do not exclude guide dogs or service dogs in that period of time, because they are excluded from that. I met with Mr. Scott Morrison on Valentine's Day this year. My dog has done one other thing. She opened a door to me that I never thought would be opened. Kempsey can be very proud to say that it has the only 2 dogs in Australia that have ever been inside the Prime Minister's office in Parliament House in Canberra. Chelsea got so excited when she kissed Scott Morrison, she fell off the lounge, bit her lip, bled over his carpet. Both of my dogs have saved my life on 2 separate occasions, each. September last year I had a blood clot. I had blood clots in both legs and infected cellulitis at the moment. A blood clot broke off, went through my heart into my lungs. I was unable to call out for help. I said to Chelsea, tell him that's her commander bark. She raised hell. Half an hour later I was in an ambulance on the way to hospital. She saved my life. She tried 3 times to get into that ambulance and come with me. The whole reason I met with Mr. Morrison was over the Companion Animal Act. We want a national approach like America has with the American Disabilities Act that covers all service dogs, because state by state it's a nightmare and rules are different. So when I travel to Victoria or Queensland, I've got a different set of rules to go by, depending where I am. We saw last week a lady excluded from a Qantas flight, her dog, because it wasn't registered with the right organisation. We've seen a lady in Western Australia be denied service by a taxi driver for her guide dog. We've seen guide dogs in South Australia be excluded from restaurants, Asian restaurants. All I ask is that the council has compassion in this issue. Yes, there needs to be safety for all people in the community, but there also needs to be the ability for people like myself who need, sometimes more than others, their animal to help them get through their day. Sometimes it's minute by minute. Because a few weeks ago I was going to commit suicide. And my little blue dog attacked me for 2 hours and she wouldn't let me go. I've still got the t-shirt, I won't wash it. It's got paw prints all over it. This shirt I wear today has got her blood on it, because I saved her life too. She fell off my ute, got dragged at 80 k's. And I wore this shirt, I'm dressed the way I am today because this is how I was when I met the Prime Minister. I thank you very much for your time and your leadership of our community. And on the issue of suicide, Liz, I look forward to meeting you on Friday, because it is something that we as a community must overcome. Every life is valuable. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. And I don't know, is there any questions? There is no questions, but it's good to see you back.
Thanks, Liz. Good to be back home.
Thank you. Consideration of motions for supplementary reports and motions for changes of order of business. Councillors?
Move that way.
Move that, do they remain? Is that what you're moving?
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor. All in favour of the order of business?
Aye.
That's been carried. Consideration of reports relating to the public forum matters.
Move that we bring the 2 matters forward.
Second that.
Thank you, Councillor. Morris, and seconded by Councillor McGinn. All in favour of bringing the public forum matters forward? That's been carried. We will now bring forward the public forum matters. The first item was the item number 13.1. There is a recommendation, councillors. Do I have a mover? So it's been moved by Councillor Patterson and it's seconded by Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, could I just suggest a minor grammatical correction? We're writing to the Minister for Transport and Roads, and that they consider it should be he consider. That's in 3.
So it's just a he rather than, oh,
Oh, you want he instead?
no, it's not a they. And that the Minister probably considers, because the Minister for Transport and Roads tomorrow could change to a female. So, yeah. Mover, do you accept that, those word changes? Thank you. No debate? No, do you wish to speak or?
Motion.
Yeah. Do you want to?
Madam Mayor,
Reserve your right?
the issue with the boating access for the Ocean and South West Rocks in relation to the Back Creek, I do believe that we're going to look at that more broadly for what the needs of South West Rocks are. Obviously, any movement in Back Creek, Trial Bay boating access or the Macleay River access, any movement or any change would be quite expensive. Not would be, will be. So to conduct a overview of what the needs are for access for South West Rocks in relation, just very quickly in relation to access of the Macleay River, parking of boats and trailers, and also access to and from the ocean. I think this report heads us in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Any speakers against? Councillor?
Madam Mayor, I'm not speaking for or against. I have a question, if I may.
Question?
I presume Director Fish would all over this one. Mr. Blundell suggested that we have a consideration of putting in a rock wall. What's it called? Training wall. I'll get the words right. Thank you, Councillor Shields. The cost of such an installation would be beyond I presume, the funding of Kempsey Council. Who would be responsible, and are there any opportunities, if it's proven needed, for a grant or the government to fund it in some way?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there's obviously various grants available which are listed within the report, which you obviously council would be open to apply for if that was a solution that which provided a good outcome for boating in South West Rocks. Those grants have varying degrees of contribution depending on the criteria associated with the individual grants, but generally the grants are of the order of 50% contribution from council. There may be other avenues to explore funding though through the minister, for example, or the other government departments taking the lead on the matter. So, but yeah, certainly the upfront cost associated with that solution would be quite expensive, and certainly the work done to date, or past work that's been done in terms of studies, has certainly indicated that any such solution would require ongoing maintenance dredging in combination with that.
A further question, if I may, Director Fish. At the moment, point 3 of the recommendation says we're asking the Minister to allocate funding to investigate. would it be prudent to amend the motion to ask them to fund any action recommendation from the investigation?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think, Councillor, that would be a future step. I think the investigation work would be required initially, which would then identify what is the best case scenario for boating in South West Rocks, and that would be a subsequent discussion.
And finally, Mr. Blundell raises the issue of rapidly changing situation in Back Creek. Should we be asking for expeditious treatment of this issue?
Through you, Madam Mayor, you could certainly, in writing to the Minister, request that the matter be considered quite urgently. But I think it needs to be acknowledged that to undertake such investigation work and modelling certainly takes time. But certainly we could ask that the Minister consider it without delay.
And that really wouldn't need an amendment from us. It could just happen. Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, just a quick question of clarification to
Councillor Morris.
Director Fisher, and that is that any investigation would likely to include an estimate, a rough estimate of costs and a BCR, so that we have got the data to move forward. That would be correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it would, depending on how if funding was to be allocated to investigation, it would obviously depend how that investigation is structured. It could be a multi-staged approach, or it could be, all aspects done in the one body of work. But certainly that would need to come out through that work ultimately for the state government to consider allocating funds. That those sort of things are absolutely necessary.
So we would be pushing for those.
Yes, correct.
Thank you. I put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation? All against? That recommendation has been carried. Oh. Any against? Any against? I couldn't see a hand up for against, so I didn't call against. There was no point. We're now going to the notice of motion 15.1, review of dog off-leash areas. Councillor Morris.
Madam Mayor, I move the motion as...
I need... You're going to move it?
I'm going to move it.
And I've got a seconder.
I am looking at a minor change, and I would just need to wordsmith how that's going to be put in as a result of Andrew's talk or speech, or for a public forum session, that there was no intention at all to restrict guide dogs and service dogs, and we must ensure that we abide by the law, and it is law that they are permitted. So I think we should be making sure that, well, we should be putting a part in there, and I'm not sure which is the best location. Maybe it's another point that council enshrines in its dog off-leash areas or dogs policies, that we comply with other acts in relation to dog access. And as far as to say that with Macleay Valley Coast holiday parks, we should have it in their policy or in their dog-friendly provisions that such dogs are permitted at any time. So we should make that clear.
Can we see clarification on that as to what the holiday parks policy actually is?
It's an attachment. The provisions, it's straight off their website when you're booking as to what the provisions are. So I would just like to modify it slightly so that it does have that provision in there. Other than that, I think it's fairly clear what the intention is, and I believe we need to be looking at doing it and discussing with the General Manager. The resourcing will be such that it's likely to be done before the Christmas holiday break.
Is there a way just to further that conversation while we're looking at it, that we can also have in there something that around the wording that council champions the...
we could have it in that way, the council champions
the
dogs and service dog provisions, not just in our, but in all, across all areas,
Shire.
yeah, restaurants, clubs, everything, that they are aware of and comply with that legislation.
Can I just ask a question for clarification?
Yes, councillor.
I totally agree with what Councillor Morris has said, and I'm referring now to the appendix that says dog-friendly provisions, Macleay Valley Coast Holiday Parks. When it says that dogs, one small dog per site outside of the high season, do you know, I would read that assuming that any guide dogs or therapy dogs would be excluded. I know it doesn't actually say that, but if that's the law, I can't see how a guide dog or a therapy dog could be excluded in a park like this. So actually, if you read it, I mean, I think we need to clarify it 100%. But I would be very surprised that they wouldn't be allowed there, and I think we should seek clarification that guide dogs and therapy dogs, service dogs, are always welcome. Maybe those words need to actually
Be in there.
Be in there, because when you read it, I would just assume that means pets.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, in item 4, it actually says seek clarification how they implement the policy. I think that's a question we'll definitely ask them. In relation to Councillor Morris's point, we could actually wind that into recommendation 1, that council review the beach access provisions for dogs at council beaches, including ensuring that all aspects of anti-discrimination in relation to companion animals, etc., are included. Or words to that effect. I think one of the things that we need to ensure as a community, we are becoming and wanting to be seen as a very inclusive community, and companion animals are a very, very important part, and guide dogs are a very, very important part of being an inclusive and diverse community. And we need to make sure that that's quite front and centre in some of this.
Would you?
But Craig, along with what the Mayor said, I'd also like to see us put in something else there, that we extend this to promote all businesses within the Macleay to comply with those provisions.
Would you be happy, councillor, with the words along the lines of that council champions the legislation for the provision of guide and service dogs, that we actively champion the legislation across the Shire?
The legislation
Across the Shire
across the Shire.
for the provision for guide and service dogs. Would you be happy with that?
It's defined as assistant animals.
Assistant animals or whatever it is, because part of the reason for this is to bring this front and centre to the community about dogs off leash areas, and this would be one way of bringing this to top of mind.
And the other thing is too, we all know that people that are going to that have dogs of that nature are going to look after them. They're going to be doing the right thing. And they're going to be controlled, and they're going to protect people. They're not going to hurt people.
So the second R, are you happy with that?
You'll be on the screen.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's an interesting issue that this has been brought about by possibly not a bad pet, but possibly not a responsible owner. And that sort of thing does need legislation to cover, or some type of rules to cover. But reading the current the dog-friendly provisions from the holiday parks, you know, the large dogs will not be permitted. Now, I haven't seen too many guide dogs that aren't Labradors or of that type. So, and it also says that the approval of the dogs will be at the manager's discretion. So it's quite broad, and I think Bruce has hit the nail right on the head with his notice of motion.
Okay, any further debate? I put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation, all against. The recommendation's been carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to consideration of reports relating to a consensus motion. We have in the recommendation items 13.1, the mayoral and councillor fees, 13.9, the statement of cash and investments, 13.10, Roses Bridge at Nulla, 20.1, legal matters, 20.2, the audit and risk committee meeting minutes, 20.3, the tender for provision for line marking services, and 20.4, for the tender for provision of insurance brokers and risk management.
Madam
So
Mayor,
do
I move they remain there.
Second that, Madam Mayor.
So I have a mover and a seconder. Do I have questions or a removal? Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In interest of openness and transparency, I would like to withdraw 13.8, mayoral and councillor fees for 2019-20. And I'd also like to withdraw 13.10, raises Bridge, Nulla Nulla Creek Road. And I'd also like to withdraw 20.1, 20.2, 20.3 and 20.4 because of questions which have to be asked in confidential.
Just 13.9 then.
The consensus motion will be 13.9, which will be moved. It was moved by Councillor Saul, seconded by Councillor Patterson. I move the recommendation. All in favour? All against? That item has been carried. We'll move on to item number 12, which is the mayoral minute. It is as written. It is in relation to the workers' compensation and coverage for the firefighters that was decreed by the state government, that we picked that up at the last minute and cost shifted back to local government. And this is directly from the recommendation from the Local Government New South Wales. I'm sure all councillors have read it or saw it before it was put up. So I'm moving it as it is. Councillor Horval, do you wish
No, I'd like to ask a question, Madam
the
Mayor.
mayoral minute? Yes.
Thank you very much. This cost shifting and the immediate expectation that council will fund it, and yet we haven't actually had it in our forward estimates of that expenditure. Can you see the conflict there with good governance of council and the state government then impinging on us to fund something that's not in our budget?
Absolutely. It flies in the face of integrated planning and reporting. And hence why Local Government New South Wales got straight on to the front foot on this. I'm sure it will come up at Country Mayors next week. And this is not the only thing that has been cost shifted down onto us in the recent probably weeks and months and this last year. So, and to have this foisted on us just as we're about to adopt our operating plan. No council had this budgeted in their operating plan, which is legislation that we do an operating plan, put it out on public exhibition and adopt it. So the mayoral minute will go some ways in helping the whole of the local government sector have a say in how this has just got to stop.
Yes, I support you, Madam Mayor, in that. And I also believe, and I would hope you could confirm this, that the state budget of New South Wales government is in surplus, and yet they're hitting up local councils with $19 million extra, and it's just so surprising that they would do that to council. So
Surprising at all, they do it all the time.
we're state government in budget. So, Madam Mayor, I support your motion.
Councillor Saul.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support your motion as well. 2 points, 2 questions actually to ask to the GM. How can we fund this? This is, again, if this actually motion is passed and the state government takes no notice, how are we going to fund this extra expenditure?
Through Madam Mayor, as council is aware, our draft budget's out on exhibition at the moment, and will be coming to the 25th of June council meeting. We will have to give consideration and take the state government's basically mandate at this stage to include that extra $97,000. So as we review the draft budget, we'll actually look at what we will cut. There'll be cuts to the community services. We're not really sure exactly what that area is, but whether it's a playground, whether it's reducing services in other areas. It's we'll just have to look at how to do that. We're already running a deficit budget, so we can't just simply add it to it. We do need to look at how we might cut it. There is the opportunity for us to not do anything in that budget, wait to see whether the state government listens to local government industry and delays this, and we could actually review it at a quarterly review as well.
And thank you, Madam Mayor. And the second point is, if I may, we need the community support on this. The community needs to understand what this impact will have on this council and on them as ratepayers. So I urge council to notify the public and make this a major issue to say that, and that may then, hopefully, enough lobbying to state government, they have a change of heart and we may not have to pay this in cost. So I would urge council and the media and the public to make an issue of this, and hopefully state government backs down on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. I put the recommendation. Oh, sorry.
I just want to make one point. It's not so much a question, it's more a point which is an extension of this that probably adds on to what Councillor Saul was talking about. And a lot of the community probably doesn't realise. Council pays 11.7%. Ours is 97 million. That's 97,000. The insurance industry pays the remainder, which means that every person who's got insurance is going to have an increase in their fire service levy on their insurance. So it's not just this hit. Our community is going to be hit again with every insurance policy, and they need to be aware of that.
Thank you, councillor, and that's a really salient point. I put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation? The recommendation's been carried. Thank you, councillors. We have dealt with 13.1. Yes, we have. Page 19. 13.2, the quarterly budget review. I have a recommendation. Thank you, councillor. So it's been moved by Councillor Morris, seconded by Councillor Williams. Any debate? Councillor Hawthorne?
We have some questions, Madam Mayor, please.
Yes.
The first one, matters in progress, please, and that's another document. It's 13.2.3. And I'm coming to it eventually. On page 4, it's talking about the resolution concerning open spaces policy, which Council has engaged a consultant and stage 1 community infrastructure audit commenced. I presume when you engage a consultant, I guess I'm asking a question of the General Manager, what time frame would we expect this report to come back to Council?
Mr. Fish may be able to add some more specific to it, but the actual undertaking of the community infrastructure strategic plan will be quite an extensive process. This is just the first step in that. So the timing of this audit, I imagine, would be several months.
12 months.
Yeah, it'll be over 12 months for the entire plan. Yeah, for the entire plan, it'll be over 12 months for the entire plan. This audit part's just the first step in that.
And the cost of this consultation is in the budget, I presume?
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you. I'm trying to get to the next question. On page 6, we're looking at the planning proposal at 600 Macleay Valley Way, and it talks about community consultation for the planning proposal to be undertaken. And it's to do with the gateway determination. When that determination comes back, if I could just make sure in my mind of the procedure, that will have to be put on public display. Is that what would happen with the gateway?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's already been on public exhibition, so the public has had the opportunity to comment on it, and also relevant government agencies have as well. The proponent is just answering some inquiries that have come through the state agency submissions at the moment, so it's in their hands. But I'd expect it'll come back to council in the near future.
Thank you. On page 15, wish the computer could go faster. On the item there about bitumen sealing of Point Plummer Road, it talks about 9th of May 2019. The status unchanged, prospective action included in draft 2018-19 operating plan. Is that the correct date?
Should be 1920.
Thank you. Well, I don't remember it being in the previous one. On page 17, I can't get... I've pressed it, nothing happened.
Up the top, it'll change pages. Double arrow. No, it's on page 17, just press the double arrow.
Righto. And zip through to page 17. The resolution calls for a statement, this is at the bottom of page 17, a statement of local character be developed to help preserve the current character of Point Plummer area as part of the local strategic planning statement. In the progress it says it's going to be incorporated into the Crescent Head character statement. Can we be sure that it will be a very explicit and different character statement to what Crescent Head is, which Point Plummer, we all remember vividly the campaign to maintain the rustic nature. This character statement will address that, I presume. So my question is, why can't it be a separate one?
In terms of being strategic with this, Point Plummer road is part of the Crescent Head area, and it will be included in that local strategic planning statement, and it will highlight the various characteristics across that area.
Councillor, were you moving a point of order?
Yeah, I was.
Which I couldn't get because
Probably too late.
Yeah.
Could we find out what the point of order is, madam? I don't know what it is.
It's irrelevant now.
Thank you.
Is there one on the previous one too? Looks like it. Let's set up reboot.
Just while councillors try and find the page, if you're wanting to call a point of order, please put on your light so that I can acknowledge you, and then do you have to state what your point of order is?
Madam Mayor, can I ask a question while Councillor Hall was looking for his pages? Are these pages, is these questions not something that could be asked at the briefing session last night, or they have no relation to the actual passing of this?
They're fine to be asked in council, councillor. Just going back to the point of order, you'll need to call out point of order, because if I see your light on, I'll just think that you're in line for a question. So we've got the next question?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Having gone through it. Just to answer Councillor Patterson's concern.
No, point of order. Just ask your question on
yes,
it.
Madam
Thank
Mayor.
you.
I believe I'm asking it on behalf of the community. The South Kempsey, on page 22, the page 22 on the South Kempsey Pressure Sewage Scheme, and it says, with completion of the environmental assessment and review of current design, Council is now in the process of completing the detailed design. Do we have a time frame for this part of the process to be completed?
Not sure what you mean by this part of the process. We're in the process of completing the detailed design. Whether specifically that, we are still hoping to actually have this project finished by the end of 2020.
Next year, the whole thing up and running?
That's correct.
Okay, that's something the community will be looking forward to hearing.
That's been made public quite regularly.
And I guess, Madam Mayor, my next question is to the General Manager. The Rock Fishing Safety Act, the resolution there on page 22, that the Council not participate in the Rock Fishing Safety Initiative program and not have the coastline of the Kempsey Shire LGA declared an area where life jackets need not be worn. I guess I think go to the next page. We've notified non-participation. In the light of what happened at Crescent Head last week, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor, I'm going to ask the General Manager, I guess, would it be legally possible to revisit this decision on notice of motion or via council staff decision that we should mandate the wearing of life jackets?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Council's made a decision on this. It is far too early to be making any review based on the very, very tragic situation that happened with Lucas last week. There is no indication of what actually occurred there, and that would need to await a coroner's finding.
Yes, I'm actually referring to the Argus report that said that...
Thank you, Councillor.
So,
Just ask the question.
So my question is, a notice of motion to revisit it, would the state government consider it in the future that we then become part of the mandatory wearing area?
There's always an option for council to rescind the current position and change that.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. I'm going to page 29 now, if I can get there with this machine. Other people get there quicker. Why is mine so slow? I try that. Thank you. Yes, I see that. Yep. So on the top, LED lighting upgrade, street lighting, it's recommended for removal, but we haven't actually got the decision to proceed with it from the electrical people. Who was it?
That's correct. The recommendation to
Section
remove
80,
it.
sorry, Madam Mayor. Sorry, General Manager.
The decision to, or the recommendation is to remove it because it actually deals with what the report was, and which was with the LED lighting upgrade. We've got a range of those. The decision on future lighting is a separate decision.
Thank you. So it's fine to remove it. We don't need to hold it there for further decisions.
We'll come back to council when you've got the revised information, Asia.
And finally, a technical point on page 35. It talks about Jim Sterling Oval. I think we moved the motion that name it the Jim Sterling OA Oval because he was given an Order of Australia, and I just think we should constantly refer to the fact that he was an outstanding member of our community, and it should be Order of Australia or OA in any further addressing of this issue of the naming of that oval. Thank you, and that's the questions on that area, unless other people have them. The grant status summary, which is getting to it.
In fact, Madam Mayor, while we're getting there, can I just ask a quick question on
Yes,
that?
certainly.
Sort of more of a request rather than a question. With the iPad, I find it impossible to read that, and I have previously asked could it be formatted such that the text is larger so you can read it, because when you get there you have to enlarge it so you can see it. When you scan across it pixelates and it's almost, so either we need a printed copy or we need it formatted in a way that it can be read on the iPad.
Thank you, Councillor. I think that's noted.
Yes,
We're
Madam
still
Mayor.
struggling with it.
The grant summary condensed, and it's on the first page. Yes, when it comes up on my iPad, it's almost impossible to read. When you zoom in, you lose the heading of the column. So that's a concern. I'm trying to get to the one that says commenced.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly, Councillor.
Just while Councillor Horville's looking, I noticed in the content of the actual agenda paper on page 20 of 72, we're talking about the rates and annual charges, user charges and fees, and it notes here in the report that there's $108,000 decrease in caravan park revenue based on their latest forecast. I was just wondering, has there been a downturn in occupancy, or what's that related to? Because I always thought that the occupancy was very full and that it was, I'm a bit surprised to see any projected revenue go backwards. So if there could be a comment, that would be great.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. No, there hasn't. The reports that we get monthly from the holiday park manager are showing good growth year on year. I think that was probably largely from sort of 12 months or more ago when the budget was originally set. It was probably overly optimistic at that time. But there's been no issues in terms of occupancy or performance at those parks. They're largely meeting expectation, and this was just, now that we're sort of so close to the end of the year, to bring it back in line and to go, okay, to reflect a more realistic outcome for the full year.
Thanks for that clarification.
Madam Mayor,
Councillor Horville.
thank you. On the first page of the grant summary, it talks about a section of road, and it's Australian Black Spot program. It's halfway down. 0.85 kilometre section of Armidale Road east of Bellbrook, and it says commenced. I drove the road on Saturday. It looks completed to me. Has that happened since this was written?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. It should actually show completed there. I'm not certain that the line marking has occurred, but essentially the works are done.
And again, on the second page, talking about grant project applications awaiting outcomes or in application phase, again on Armidale Road, representation of state government in collaboration with Armidale Regional Council, and the project was the reclassification of Armidale Road to regional road status and upgrade the projects. The submissions were made to the local member according to the level of application. Announcement in March 2019 that the road will be reclassified. It's all very well to announce it will be. Do we have a timetable on when it will be reclassified?
General Manager.
Yeah, through there. No, we don't have a timetable. That will be totally in the hands of the state government.
Okay, thank you very much. They were my questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for...
I put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation? All against? All against? It's been carried. Thank you.
Back to
Our next item is 13.1. Thank you, Councillor Morris. 13.3, sorry. Thank you. It was seconded by Councillor McGinn. There is
a question, Madam. Once again, Madam Mayor, my question is to whoever would like to answer it. This seems to be cost shifting. Is it cost shifting, and what sort of cost will be put on council by the state government in this reclassification, or our administration of the Crown lands?
Yes, it is cost. Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, it is cost shifting. We don't know what the ultimate cost of this actually will be. It's already costing considerable internal staff resources for this. It's a major new step in any processes. We don't have any clear understanding, given that it actually deals with natal title potential compensations. If that is actually awarded, who actually pays that compensation is up to the local council or the state government. There's a lot of uncertainties about this, and it is an issue that LG New South Wales is taking up with the state government as well because of the concerns around this particular act.
And so, through you, Madam Mayor, Mr. General Manager, the cost shifting is obviously an amount that we should have in our forward budget.
Actually, point of order, this motion is not about cost shifting. This motion is about the categorisation of lands.
I'll accept that point of order. Councillor Morris, do you wish to...
I suppose I was, after what Councillor Horville said, I was thinking that, and what the General Manager said, I'm just wondering whether we need another dot point in there, and that is that council continues to list or to compile its costs so that when this does eventually get fought by local government New South Wales, and we pursue the state traditional funding, we've got the evidence and the information to support such a claim. And I know it's not about categorisation, but if that was put in as point 2, that we monitor and maintain an accuracy of the additional costs
Happy to second that as the.
Yeah, because I think we should be
I
in a
think you-
position to fight it in the future.
And that will then bring it top of mind, because I know that through country mayors, that's a really big conversation. Through our JO it is, and through local government New South Wales.
Because
and
the
I'm
only-
expecting we will get that
Yeah.
same campaign that we've just had
And the only thing
around
that's certain,
this.
the only thing that's certain about this that the General Manager is saying about is that any income producing land, the income goes back to the state, not to us. But any costs associated in making income producing, we bear.
And my understanding is, General Manager, we were given $60,000 initially, and that would be expanded.
Way over.
Yeah.
So I'm saying we can monitor and be in a position to
Yeah.
fight it later on.
Yeah, the state government's provided 4 hours of training for 2 of our staff into a hugely complex issue of being a native title manager, of which they used to have a team of lawyers dealing with. They provided $60,000 thereabouts to undertake 67 plans of management, or do plans of management covering 67 parcels of land. The cost of that would be in the order of hundreds of thousands of dollars to actually do that. So it is an issue across the state, and it is a major concern, and different councils are trying to address it in different ways. But putting in item 2 would actually be quite good for us to make sure we do itemise the costs to this community of actually undertaking this work of the state government.
A final question, Madam Mayor, if I could.
Yes, certainly. Have we got, just before you go on, have we got some words?
Yeah, it's up on the screen.
Thank you.
So is the cost of implementing this at the moment in our forward budget?
Yep, through you, Madam Mayor. In the 2019-20 budget, we've included approximately $260,000. So $60,000 being the grant that was referred to that we've received, and an additional $200,000 to commence the preparation of those plans of management.
That won't be enough to do all of them. Wow.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Councillor
Mitchell.
Morris, do you wish to debate? Any debate? No further debate. I put the recommendation. All for? All against? It's been carried. Councillor Williams. We just voted. I didn't realise you were out.
Move 13.4.
Second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor McGinn, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Any debate? Councillor Horville.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'll be speaking against the motion.
You reserve your right. Thank you, Councillor.
The draft code of meeting practice as amended out on display, and we've had one submission come back, and the submission is about public forums being shifted to Friday. No, to the day before. So it'll be on Mondays. In the light of openness and transparency, the present practice is for public forums to be commenced at the beginning of our council meeting. If it's shifted to Monday, there will be no audience other than the person making the submission. So we're actually not engaging the community. And as far as I'm concerned, the present process engages our community. So in openness, public forums and then decisions is an open way of doing it. By separating it by hours or days as the point in the new code of practice, it's actually not engaging our community and not involving our community in open and transparent means.
Just a clarification, I thought it was an open meeting and a public forum.
It is, but Councillor has reserved her right, so...
So I'm being
Continue.
debated in the middle of my speech, Madam Mayor.
Yeah,
I'll make a point of order on that
Councillor.
interruption.
That's correct.
I apologise, Councillor Horville, but you were speaking and I was confusing. Maybe I've got it wrong, so I just was seeking clarification.
Thank you, Councillor. You have apologised. Thank you, Councillor Horville.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Shields. So I'm actually asking that we eliminate that. If we don't, I will be voting against it, because I believe we really do need to keep our communication with the community open, and by separating it by 15 hours or whatever. And we have in the report on the submissions, it talks about in the response by council staff to the submission that public forums not be on the day before. At the moment, the reason for it is that councillors will be able to think about what was said at the public forum at 4:30 p.m. on the Monday, and then come back with more information and be able to deal with it properly. At the moment, if we have a public forum speaker, and it hasn't happened, comes in with information that makes councillors want to reconsider it, we have the option as council to defer the motion to another meeting or to an extraordinary council meeting if it's urgent, and then we can go and research it. But if it comes up in the public forum at the moment, we can do that. So the idea that it's going to help council deliberate is not the case. Of course, there are other aspects of this policy which I don't agree with, and not reflecting on this particular General Manager, and if he takes offence, I apologise, but as far as I'm concerned, Council is still in charge. At the moment, the new Code of Meeting Practice gives the option in a number of areas for the General Manager to decide what to do with information that councillors should want to discuss or bring up. The fact that a report no longer needs to be brought back to council, it's at the discretion of the General Manager whether a report is put in another form. And of course, we certainly don't want a report being given to us in an SMS or an email. We're here on behalf of the community. We should be able to have reports brought back to this public forum called council and address it in front of our community, in front of our larger video community now, and address it and debate it as is required as an elected member of council. The moment the decision will be SMS at midnight, I doubt that would ever happen, but it is possible that a General Manager could determine that a report is sufficient in that regard. And it has already happened, of course, as you know, that a couple of reports were included in the ongoing matters, or what do you call it?
Matters in progress.
Matters in progress. So, as far as I'm concerned...
Thank you, that's your time.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Morris, are you speaking for or against, or...?
It's not really either. Madam Mayor, I am against some of the provisions, but I'm pragmatic enough to know that my comments on those won't come too much. But what I would like to float by is, I believe that the changes to the public forum to the day before is likely to present problems with the community being able to access the information and have adequate time to prepare to make a presentation. And I'm not going to suggest that we change the meeting day to streamline that, which I've discussed previously with the General Manager. But what I would like to think is that we will review how that process operates and review the meeting day if there is an issue with that. Because at the moment, we can legally publish the business paper on a Friday night, but the community has to request by the Friday lunchtime. Now, we're going to aim to get it out by Tuesday, but that only really gives them the Wednesday and the Thursday to consider whether they need to put in a public submission and provide the information. I would like to think that they would be more able to do that if they had a weekend. I'm not going to object to the public forum being moved, simply because there was only, whilst I thought that there were a considerable amount of the community that objected to it, there was only one submission put in. So the community spoke to me and said there's only one person that was concerned about it. So therefore I can't say the community is concerned about it. The only other one that I'd like to look at doing is to change the recognition of acknowledgement of country and actually have a more traditional one and include the comment that we acknowledge elders, both past, present and emerging.
That could be done.
And I think that because every other place that I go to, the normal acknowledgement is normal. That one was determined in 2007 by notice of motion. I think it's time we updated it to a more contemporary one.
The word is not part of the code, councillor, and I take on board what you've just said.
Yeah.
That can easily be done. Do you want to speak now? No other questions. And you've got the right to reply, but the general manager.
If I just make a couple of points to help clarify things. Yes, the review, Councillor Morris, I think any sort of code of meeting practice needs to be under continual review, and we'll need to watch how this goes. And one definite thing that will happen is come October next year, the whole code of meeting practice will be reviewed by the new council as well. So, but that doesn't mean we can't be reviewing in the meantime. Just to clarify for councillors as well, with the 4:30 on the Monday afternoon, it will be webcast, and we should on most occasions be able to also get that up onto the website prior to, or that evening prior to the council meeting the next day, in case there's a councillor who isn't actually able to be present. So there is the opportunity for those areas. In relation to Councillor Horville's comment about not taking offence, no, I don't take offence, but councillors are in charge. It's council who actually adopts this code of meeting practice, which permits myself or any other future general manager to do that. I don't actually get a vote on this, so it is actually council that's actually in charge.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, just one other quick question to the gentleman. Sorry, Councillor.
Just before we go, because Councillor Patterson has had his light on, so it seems now we all want to speak, and then Councillor Baxter's got his light on. So, do you want to take this informal debate? Because I need a speaker against, because I've had one.
Mine's just a question.
I haven't had one for.
Mine's a question.
Is yours a question?
I'm for.
Yours a question?
My question, Madam Mayor.
I'll take your question.
And I'm for it as a seconder. I suppose the basis of this code of meeting practice change did it not come from the Office of Local Government, Madam Mayor?
Most of the code of meeting practice, there's a mandated range of things within that have been provided by the Office of Local Government, which we must follow. There's a range of supplementary elements, all of which I think from memory from the Office of Local Government we've actually included. Some of those allow for a level of flexibility, and one of those is the timing of the public forum, and it is as we've put out on exhibition to have that on the evening before the actual council meeting.
So in actual fact, this code of meeting practice that we are adopting is in line with other councils?
Yeah, it will be in line. Certain timing of different things when meetings are held and the timing, all that, there's some flexibility allowed into it. But overall, it's every council will be following a very, very similar code of meeting practice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Baxter.
Speaking for it, and in reply to Councillor Horville there, I draw his attention to the bottom of page 31. It's a response from council to the public forum, to the objection, and it says that if the public presentations are the night before, it gives councillors time to consider the presentations and discuss it and affect our judgment. We had two excellent presentations today. Now, none of us have sat around and none of us can get together and talk about those presentations in detail. Whereas if the night before presentations gives us time to consider what they've said and make a considered judgment. So I disagree with you saying the time difference is a disadvantage. I think it's an advantage.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor
Madam
McGinn,
Mayor,
you
point
can.
of order. Was that a speech in favour or against?
He was allowed to speak for. He hadn't spoken for, and I had a speaker against. Councillor McGinn, you.
I just had
Another question, and then you
It
can
was just a very
close
short
debate.
question. The code says that the pre-council meeting will be conducted in accordance, now needs to be conducted in accordance with the code. The General Manager indicated that the public forum, which will be before that, will be webcast. I know the pre-council meeting won't be webcast because it's confidential, but will there be minutes of the pre-council meeting? Of the major outcomes and the discussion points? or should there be?
Yeah, it's not required. It's not something that's been our practice. It's actually
And that's
just it's our briefing that we go through.
Yeah.
We run through the paper. So I'm not seeing any need to actually be doing minutes of that. It's not actually a formal meeting.
But we do need to monitor conflicts of interest by the code for that briefing session. So people have to declare conflicts of interest as part of it.
They should be doing that
which
now.
implies that there needs to be some form of minute.
Yeah, the
Or some form of record.
councillors certainly should be doing that now. And certainly in, I guess, 15 years attending council meetings and councillor briefings, I haven't known any council actually take minutes. Councillors have taken it upon themselves in those briefings to take responsibility for declaring those interests and, if necessary, removing themselves from that discussion in that briefing as well.
Thank you, Councillor McGinn. You can close debate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will keep this brief because I think we know how the numbers are going to fall on this vote anyway. But there has been a lot of work that's gone into the Code of Meeting Practice in adopting the draft code that is before us today. We have done a number of workshops, and indeed the Code of Meeting Practice has been out on public exhibition. I'd like to refer particularly to the point Councillor Hallville raised regarding moving the public forum to the evening before. I think this is a move in the right direction. However, having said that, we have just had a discussion that if things don't work for us, we're able to change our Code of Meeting Practice in due course. So I'd like to think that we are going to move forward with this Code of Meeting Practice. But indeed, if for some reason it isn't appropriate, we have the ability to be able to change things. But let's give it a go. The public forum being moved to the evening before is still a public meeting. It still will be webcast. But what I like about it is it gives time for consideration of the issues for councillors between that presentation and then the decision making the next day. In my short time on council in the last 6 or so years, I can recall, and I won't actually discuss what they are, but where a public forum a speaker has spoken about something, and quite rightly it's been a passionate issue to an individual, and then it's completely changed the course of the debate around the table. And it's cost us a lot of money, and they haven't always been the right outcomes, the right decisions, and they haven't always been in line with our operating plan and the decisions that we make when we're not hurried, flustered, emotional, or centred on an issue without the consideration of all of the issues that we juggle as a council. I think having that space between discussion or between the presentation of a community member or group and then us making decisions will create better outcomes in the long term. The other thing is, currently we do have some councillors who don't make the effort to attend the pre-meeting briefing, and this would encourage them to do so by coming to that meeting the night before. I certainly think that this is open and transparent, and indeed this will create better outcomes in the long run. So I commend the work that's been done on our Code of Meeting Practice. I welcome the changes, and I believe we should support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. I put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation, all against. The recommendation's been carried. Thank you, councillors. We now move on to the next item, which is 13.5, Stuart Point Foreshore. Oh, yes. Well, we could just deal with this one. We have 4 minutes. So we will deal with this one. Thank you,
If I may.
It's been moved, Councillor Morris, seconded Councillor Saul. Thank you. And the recommendation, Councillor? No debate. No debate. I put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation. All against. It's been carried. All against? All for? No?
Madam Mayor, I hadn't actually got to the page. I'm sorry.
I'll do it again. The recommendation is that the development plan for the Stewart's Point foreshore upgrade be adopted. All in favour? Yes. All against? It's been carried. Thank you. We will now break for morning tea. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, councillors. We'll resume at item 13.6. Thank you, councillor. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Thank you, councillor.
The report from the notice of motion that I put up about 12 months ago.
It is.
It's a good report.
Any debate?
No.
Put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation? All against? Thank you, councillors. 13.7. There is a recommendation. Do I have a mover? It's about the unmaintained roads. Do I have?
I'd
Thank
like to
you,
move it,
Councillor.
Madam Mayor.
Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor McGinn. Councillor Horval.
I'll have to move an amendment because they jumped in too quickly. There's a couple of things there that need fixing, but so my amendment is the recommendation as is. In point 3, my amendment changes to get rid of the word appetite. Certainly don't want to be eating gravel, and change that to willingness. And then item 4, that council receives the outcome of the response from property owners via a report for determination to a future meeting of council. And I'd add point 5, that the sources of funding be presented in this report. So go again.
So I have an amendment. I'll deal with the amendment first, unless you want to. No, you don't want to incorporate. Who was the mover? Councillor Patterson, do you wish to incorporate those? No. No. So we have an amendment which we will deal with first. So, Councillor, we need to get a seconder for the amendment.
Well, it's not up yet, Madam Mayor.
No.
Talk amongst yourself for 60 seconds, what?
Well, it's not coffee.
Well, let's see if we can get it already. That's all right.
So, Councillor, had you given the amendments to them?
Try again. Sorry about the delay, Madam Mayor.
It's all right.
I should have probably typed it up again.
So the amendment changes some wording in point 3.
Just one word. I changed it to willingness to contribute to the required road upgrades.
And then there's a...
In point 4, it says after via report put for determination to a future council meeting.
And then there was a point 5.
And a point 4, that sources of funding be presented
Councillors.
in this report.
Do I have a seconder for the amendment? No, there's no seconder. The amendment's lapsed. We go back to the main item. We have a mover, we have a seconder. Do I have any debate? Councillor Morris?
It's not so much debate, Madam Mayor, it's more of a question to the General Manager.
Yes?
And I know and I understand why the report has excluded all Crown roads, but I also know that there are several Crown roads that Council has approved developments on recently, and there has been correspondence between some owners on properties on Crown roads and the Crown with Council about potentially handing some of those roads over. Can we, or do I need probably another notice of motion would be in order to request that we get a list of Crown roads so impacted, say with more than 5 or with more than 3 houses that have been approved in the last 5 years?
Or Director?
Crown roads that may have more than 3 or 5. Yes.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, that's certainly information that we could seek to obtain. There'd be probably a little bit of work in bringing that together. We could potentially look at doing that and I guess circulating the information to councillors for their information via just a briefing note, which will then I guess allow you to consider it further as to any other actions that you would like in that space.
The main reason why I asked for that is because a few community members that prompted me to put up the original notice of motion on this matter happen to live on a Crown Road where they say that they've actually had the Crown have indicated they've written to council saying that they wish council to take the road over. Obviously the road hasn't been, and we probably need to look at a way forward, particularly where there are a reasonable number of houses that have been approved in the recent past on some of those roads.
We'll seek to just, where we can, put information. Yeah, we'll get some information and get it out to councillors, and then you can consider what the steps, as Mr. Fish said.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, and just add on that, with Crown Roads, obviously the Crown is the road authority in those instances, but there is certainly reluctance in terms of doing any maintenance on Crown Roads, and certainly there is a desire for them to hand over the roads to council to maintain, which certainly has financial implications for council, but we can certainly look at that.
I know very well, and I'd argue the same way as you are now if I was in your chair, as I have done before.
Councillor, are you... Councillor Horwell, are you speaking against?
No, I'm asking a question, if possible,
Question?
Madam Mayor. The report that will be coming back, Mr. General Manager, through you, Madam Mayor, will it come back to council for determination on future actions?
Any report that comes to council is for council's determination.
Thank you. And of course, I would presume, and that was my amendment, that sources of funding would be in that report. As a matter of course, I presume.
That's correct.
Thank you. On page 40, getting there, 48, second last paragraph, it will utilise, in the bottom of that paragraph, it will utilise a large portion of collected developer contributions for catchment 10 roads. What dollar amount is in that at this time?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think from memory there's of the order of just over $600,000 in that fund at the moment.
So the action of fixing this up could already be covered?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, the works as listed there could be done under the, I guess, how it's defined in terms of the works under catchment 10, but you have a significant length of other roads that fit within that catchment.
Thank you, Director Fish.
No further debate. I put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation, all against. It's been carried. Thank you, Councillor. Item 13.8, there is a recommendation. Do I have a mover? It's Merrill and Councillor... Thank you, Councillor. It's been moved, Councillor Morris, second Councillor Shields. Any question?
The manager, could he clarify the amount of money that is going to come out of the draft budget, please?
Yeah, so the total on the bottom of the report has an incorrect number in there. So the correct total for the mayoral and council of fees, if the recommendation is adopted, is $226,770, and the established budget's $232,512.
Thank you, Manager Thorogood. So that means we're paying less than what we thought we would. That's tremendous. Madam Mayor, again, you could clarify this. The mayoral fee that you get, do you also get the councillor fee because you're a councillor as well, or you just get the one fee?
Both. I'm a councillor and a mayor.
So you get paid. Okay. Thank you very much for that.
And Madam Mayor, that's happened all through the system of council as well, not just this council.
That's
General
correct.
Manager Mike.
Yeah, that's correct. It's standard practice that across every 126 councils in the state that the mayor also collects the councillors' fees.
I put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation, all against. You actually got that, did you? 8 to 1.
Not enough.
Madam Mayor, could I ask a question just after that result?
No, it's been dealt with. Sorry, councillor. 13.9, statement of cash. 13.10. It's been moved by councillor Shields, seconded by councillor Morris. Any debate?
Question, Madam Mayor.
Question, councillor?
On page 53, in the conclusion, it talks about council.
54.
Sorry, we're on 54.
13.
I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm sorry. My mistake, Madam Mayor. I was asking a question about the statement of cash and investments, and I didn't ask them at the time, so it's already been adopted. I can't ask.
No.
You can ask by email later on. after the
Yes,
meeting.
yes, you can.
Thank
So,
you, Madam Mayor.
13.10. It's been moved and seconded.
I'm asking a question, if I could, Madam Mayor.
Question?
What, that disappeared? Oh, there's conclusion. It appears that at the bottom of the second last paragraph again, it says which will be able to be reduced by approximately 167,500 in the works for 2021 in light of the receipt of this grant funding. Is that saying that we got more in the grant than we expected?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So currently within your 10-year program, we've got $500,000 identified for the bridge of council funds. So what this now means with the grant is that council only needs to fund 332,000, and the grant is the remaining 332,000. So in effect, 500,000 less 332,000 is 167, which is basically funds that we've now freed up through getting this grant.
And those funds would be put onto the next project on the list. Is that how it works?
Through you, Madam Mayor, in all likelihood, yes, it would be likely to remain within the bridge program unless council was to make a decision to use it elsewhere.
I put the oopsie. I put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation? All against? It's been carried. 15.2, there is a recommendation. We have a mover, Councillor Saul, you're moving it?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
You have your light on?
Madam Mayor,
I need a seconder.
Yeah, I'm about to talk. I have to talk to my motion.
We need a seconder.
I haven't moved it yet, Madam Mayor.
You're going to move it.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
And you've got your light.
I have to wait until the speaker speaks first.
Yes, okay.
Right.
Don't speak unless there's a second.
You can't speak to it.
I'm not
unless-
speaking, I'm outlining the actual motion, reading part of it.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I'm moving a declaration of a climate emergency, and I'm happy to inform the council that I have had a commitment that a seconding of this by Councillor Williams will happen, so I'm really pleased to hear that.
Point of order.
You can't say that.
You can't do that.
And I didn't say that.
You can't do that, councillor.
Well,
You need to withdraw that statement.
I withdraw the statement.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
apologise.
and I apologise to Councillor Williams if he feels aggrieved. So I'm moving that we have a declaration of, and that's what it says at the top, that Kempsey Shire Council declares that we are in a state of climate emergency that requires urgent action by all levels of government, including by local roads, by local councils, and council
Point of order,
notes.
we can all read.
To be read. So you've moved it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor, you've got your light on.
I do, Madam Mayor. I wish to move a foreshadowed motion
Okay,
when applicable.
Foreshadow motion. It's an alternative motion.
An alternative motion, foreshadowed.
I wasn't
Whatever,
sure. I thought it
whichever
was
way it
different
goes.
quality.
We've got to just wait and see if we get a seconder. Thank you, councillor. No seconder. It's been lapsed. Your alternate motion, councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've given it to the minute taker. Can I be pleased to put on the screen? And I shall also read out, for the benefit of others, My alternative motion on this issue is that 1, the climate change policy and the response to climate change is to be addressed in the already adopted Council resolution of March 19, 2019, reference 2018-394, and point 2, the most important one, that this matter of climate emergency not be considered again during this term of Council, and then such business be deemed out of order. That is my motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do I get a seconder?
Second that.
Thank you. I've got a mover and I've got a seconder. Do you wish to speak to your motion?
Madam Mayor, I think it's quite considered. We had an election on Saturday. The people have spoken. Thank you for that.
Do I have a speaker against? Councillor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 64% of Australians now believe there is a climate emergency. That's in the documentation that I was presenting to you. I would hope, my fellow councillors, you had read that. If you had read all the details that I gave you, and I have been told by 2 councillors they don't have time to read the agenda, which is really sad, because there's so much good information.
Point of order. I think you didn't say which councillors, but even so, it was a generalisation and innuendo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Climate Emergency Declaration has just been undertaken unanimously by the United Kingdom Parliament. No one voted against it. All of them said there's a climate emergency. They declared a climate emergency. So here we are saying we're not going to discuss that anymore. Councils around
that matter in the
Workshop.
adopted workshop already.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. He should not be speaking while I'm speaking. He's interrupting.
Your point of order is upheld. Councillors, let the councillor have his representation of speaking against. Thank you.
So at the moment, from my information, and I've put it out there for you to read, councils that have declared already in in Australia, Bellingen, Byron, Blue Mountains, Ballarat, and even Bath in the United Kingdom, the Upper Hunter. People are declaring that we are in a state of emergency. So I'm opposing this idea that we should not do a thing. We should do something and declare it. It's a declaration. It's not a workshop on options for policy. It's a declaration that we have a problem. If you had looked at the graphs, and I hope you all have, you would notice the upward trends on above the average temperatures for Australia. The upward trend. Point of order, Madam Mayor. A discussion is going on over there, and I would like to have people attend to what I'm saying, if that's possible.
I'll uphold that point
Thank
of
you, Madam
order.
Mayor.
We need to be quiet while other councillors are speaking.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the point I'm making to you is that people are declaring climate emergencies around the planet. And I was coming back to the fact that in Australia, we have a problem. Don't have a problem with a drought? Droughts are fine. No, they're not. Huge floods in Queensland? They happened before? Possibly, but not as big as that one. And for the first 4 months of 2019, the average temperature in Australia was a record. It was a record in January. It was a record in February. It was a record in March. It was a record in April. But please, if you think this is not an emergency, we won't declare it. And you will support Councillor Saul's motion to shut down the issue. And I'm afraid that shutting down issues, as you've done on previous ones, is not how democracy works, and it's not how we should be representing the community. For Councillor Saul to say the decision was made on Saturday that there's no climate emergency, that was not what the vote was about. It was voting for a government. And
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Josh Frydenberg, the Treasurer of Australia, on Sunday television said the science about climate change is in and he agrees with it. If you don't agree with it, well, I'd suggest you start reading a little bit more about all the information that is out there. We can't put our fingers in our ears and go, no, I don't want to hear it. Please, we are representing the community and we should be informed about what the community is saying. 64% of Australians say that climate change is a priority issue. Are you going to ignore 64% of our community? Well, that's what you will be doing if you support this motion. And sadly, democracy would have been dealt another blow by Kempsey Council. I don't know how many seconds I've got left, Madam Mayor?
40.
40 seconds. Okay. Open and
Point of order.
transparent.
Democracy is about the majority, not the minority.
Out of order. Point of order. Point of order. I hope I get my time back, Madam Mayor. We have, and I've now been told, and I've obtained a copy of a petition that is circulating in Kempsey Shire. And one of its criticisms is council's lack of openness and transparency. It's a criticism of us as a council.
Point of
And
order,
here we
you
are
need to stick
shutting
to the climate change.
No, I'm going against democracy that's being shut down, Madam Mayor, which is what is in that motion. Okay? I'm saying that we shouldn't
Thank you,
have
Councillor.
to do
Councillor Morris.
close down.
I'll take no, that was speaker against. Do I have a speaker for, or is you're a...
I'm a speaker against the amendment, but I was obviously against the original motion.
So I'll need to take a speaker for the...
Yes.
Okay, yes, miss. I've got everyone's lights on.
I'm for it.
I was before Andrew.
Mark's for it. He had his
Mark, I'll take yours first.
Madam Mayor, can I move a further amendment?
Yes, sure.
That's what I was
Oh, well,
gonna
you
do
can
as well.
suggest a further
Suggest a
amendment.
further amendment that we just keep point 1 because I wouldn't like to preempt what might come out of the workshop. Let's keep it open and
And
Are
in
you-
fact,
you know
I have
to
got an
any
amendment which I was going
opportunity.
to
So
move.
just to keep.
Are
point
you
1.
happy to just take away point 2?
To debate that further before we decide that, Madam Mayor. I think feeling of the committee.
Do you want? You'd like to move into committee?
I'd like to... I'm moving to the workshop.
A workshop? Do I have a second now?
Yep, second that.
Thank you. All in favour of going into workshop? All against going into workshop? We'll move into work. So we have more freedom to speak, not speaker for and against. Now,
Can I? Yeah.
Well, my life went
Councillor-
outrageous then.
so that was similar to what you were going to move,
Yeah.
which keep the first bit, take away the second bit.
Well, not similar. It was similar, but the wording would have been completely different.
So I think that what we're trying to establish here is that there's concern around the word, not climate change. I think we've all here acknowledged climate change. That's not the issue, and changes. It's the word emergency, and it's around this declaration of emergencies that is the problem. Am I on the right track there, councillors? So, Councillor Shields, as you...
Well, Councillor Baxter was going to talk, then I was going to talk, and Councillor Shields been allowed to interject one of what
She's always interjects.
But she has
Am I
hardly
allowed to move
spoken.
further amendment?
She did move a further amendment. It wasn't an
There's no
agenda.
amendment up there that I've
No,
seen.
and then one of the when I asked, did you want to take that? It was decided to go into workshop.
So it
I'm
needs
going to
go up as an
take
amendment.
Councillor
We should be
Baxter
discussing
because
the
he's
amendment.
on my blind side and he hardly ever gets
Never gets already.
acknowledged.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Baxter.
Thank you, Chair.
We're still in workshop.
We're in workshop, so I would like to just refer Councillor Horville to the point you just made. The issue with this notice of motion is not with its essence. It's with the procedure. You're preempting this NOM, if it's passed, would preempt any decision made in the workshop. You're tainting the decision that would come out of a workshop. The whole idea of a workshop is we all get together, we discuss, we look at the science, we look at the arguments, we look at the possible policies, the possible actions, we hear the costings from the brass, what can we afford to do, so that we can make an intelligent decision on the issue. Nobody's denying the issue, Councillor Horville. Why your notice of motion isn't appropriate is because we haven't had the workshop yet. Full stop. All of this you're talking about in your NOM could be discussed at the workshop. which is the appropriate place. That's all we're saying. We are not disagreeing with the essence of what you're saying.
We're going to shut it down, so we're deemed out of order in any further discussions.
No,
So we are
because,
disagreeing.
no, we're not saying that. We're saying bring
That's
it.
what point two
We're
says.
saying bring it. We're saying don't bring it back as a nom. We're saying bring it to a workshop.
It says, doesn't say that, it says this matter may not be considered again, doesn't say as a nom, anywhere. Workshop, the whole lot. We are not to consider a climate emergency in any way, shape or form for the remaining
And the
term of this council.
response to climate change to be addressed in the already adopted resolution
That the
of
climate change
March.
policy be addressed, not the climate emergency.
And that's the whole thing.
Oh, for
There's
God's
a difference
sake.
between an emergency and a climate change.
The point is, Bruce, Councillor Morris, to make a declaration as is in Councillor
When I
Hall.
get a chance to speak
nom.
to Councillor Baxter, you'll know exactly where I stand.
Yeah. Councillor, I'm going to take Councillor Morris. Then I'll take, and remember, whilst we're not in formal debate, we're in workshop, we have to still be cognizant of what we're saying and how we're saying it to our fellow councillors. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I haven't got this written down, so hopefully I can bring it out of my head as I thought about it the last couple of nights. I cannot support declaring a climate emergency at the moment, but I can even less support the motion that is there at the moment. In my opinion, we should be considering a climate emergency as a part of the workshops for the suite of documents around climate change. I honestly believe that we are approaching a climate emergency, but that does not mean we declare it now. We need to be strategic in how we do things. We need to be able to enunciate what the concerns are that we have got. You look at some of the studies. We have got more animals across the world that are in decline, that are near extinct. We don't know what impact that is going to have on our ecosystem. We have got countries across the world that are declaring climate emergencies. We have got the national leaders of the South Pacific countries have called it a climate catastrophe and in calling on the Australian government to do something to address. We have got aid money being poured in from Australia to support those countries in putting up more seawall defences and helping them with the additional sea level rise and storm surge impacts. It is clear that something is happening that is not right. But I cannot support declaring a climate emergency until we have got what we believe we can do and how we can address this. Right. Now, the decision might be that it's not a climate emergency for us. The decision might be that it is. But let's not rule it out of order and not to be discussed for the rest of the term of this council. Let's consider it as part of the workshop and bring back our consideration and determination. And I suppose to bring it closer to home, because all those other things are more global things, and the General Manager can confirm or deny what I'm about to say, but Council has already adopted a coastal zone management plan that indicates by the turn of the century a large proportion of Hat Head will be inundated. Now, if that's not going to be a climate emergency for Hat Head, I don't know what is. But that brings it right back to home. We do have concerns, we do have problems. We are currently monitoring the dune structure there as from a report that we adopted, even though we don't have a climate change policy to support it, because all the indicators are that a large proportion of Hat Head will lose its dunes, will lose its protection, and will be inundated in large storm events before the end of this century. We need to discuss it into the future in a strategic manner.
Councillor,
I'm speaking to my amendment.
we're still in workshop, so yeah, you can.
Okay. Yeah.
You go first, and then I'll take Councillor Patterson.
All right, I'll be brief. I don't think it's about the term climate emergency or climate catastrophe or climate change, whatever you want. We're getting very hung up on words. It's not about the term, it's about what we actually do. What actions are we going to take forward? And I do feel like if we kept point 2 in, there'd be a certain element of our community that we represent that would be very aggrieved by not being able to bring this matter back to council, and that could be interpreted different ways. This matter, climate emergency, or are we saying this term, climate emergency? I don't want to alienate that group of passionate people. Let's have the workshop, let's deal with what we can do locally, but as I said, let's not get hung up on a term.
Councillor Saul, would you be happy to
Madam Mayor, I've
move
had
that?
another thought. What I'm saying is, what if we were to,
Just keep one.
until after the workshops was held?
Yes.
Madam Mayor, can I move, if we go back, can I move an amendment which is worded slightly differently, which is what I was going to do?
Yes.
Madam Mayor,
Madam Mayor, can
can I give some words for an amendment which I discussed with the
Just
general
a
manager?
moment. Councillor Saul is, what are you proposing now?
I want to add point 2 until after the
Workshops
climate
have
change
been-
workshop has been held.
Not be considered again
Until
until after the workshop has been held?
Yes.
You'd be happy with that?
Then we're
Okay,
on.
so we're getting closer
Yes.
to
Back on the screen,
something.
please.
Madam Mayor, can I just make some comments here in relation to that? The resolution, I'll just read the resolution of March, so councillors have that fresh in their mind. That a council workshop be conducted to inform the development of a suite of policy, strategies and action plans addressing issues such as, but not limited to, climate change, sustainable living, emissions reduction, renewable energy, sea level rise, carbon footprint, waste reduction and recycling, environmental sustainability, and a subsequent report be brought back to council. Staff's interpretation of that is quite wide and will include a whole range of things. However, if item 2 there is adopted as it is currently worded, in that workshop that would preclude us from discussing this issue of climate emergency. There is a growing international thought and acknowledgement that whether it's climate change, and I think Councillor Shield is right, some of it's terminology, we're getting hung up on words, but the urgency around the need for action is something we need to discuss as a council. Now, whether you call that an emergency, a catastrophe, or just urgency, if you leave to us the way it is, you preclude us actually having that discussion. Could I suggest, and this is actually more, I think, Councillor Morris's suggestion is that
I've been allowed to.
that you have point 1 and the climate change policy response to the climate change be addressed, and this include matters such as the urgency around the need to act or words to that effect. Councillor Morris might have some more effective words than that, but to acknowledge it is a highly important issue, climate change, and we do need to work out, where we go with it. But if you leave 2 the way it is, you tie your hands up long term, and if you adopt the second part that Councillor Saul changed it to, it means that if you raise things in the workshop around and agree that this is urgent or it's an emergency, you automatically stop yourself from bringing that forward again later because you have this resolution says you can't do it after the workshop. So you wouldn't want to put that in.
Councillor Saul, are you happy with the way you've got it
I'll move
worded
an
now?
amendment.
Yes, I am.
We'll take off the.
No, it needs to be completely changed.
In your view,
Yeah. And when I get a chance to say it, you might agree, but I've been denied continually. Madam Mayor, I've had enough. I'm leaving. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Councillor.
Been denied to say.
Actually-
and I've been asking, and I was cut off. Then Councillor Shields was allowed to talk.
Look, I'm
And
sorry,
I have an
Councillor,
amendment.
we're
I am
trying.
leaving. Thank you. I'll see you at the next meeting.
Okay. So
It's rubbish to be denied the way I have been.
I'm not. No one's denying us. No one's denying
I
you.
order that I'm leaving.
Councillor, could you please...
Wait, you
Ca-
Bruce.
ca- well,
I was denied.
Councillors,
Right on.
And denied.
Please.
Thank you very much.
There's my line.
Councillor Morris, could I ask you please to come back, Bruce? The Mayor has been trying to do it, and we've been trying to get you on. There's been a whole range of lights here she is juggling. And as a workshop, and I acknowledge that I acknowledge that, and I've actually just, before you actually stood up, we actually literally just had that conversation to actually get you to actually put what you're suggesting forward.
Yes.
Quite literally, as she stood up, she was turning to actually speak to you.
So I've got other things I
Yep.
need to do, and this is
I understand that,
completely
Councillor.
unnecessarily.
So could you outline the amendment?
All that the amendment that I
Funny,
wish to
Councillor
move
Baxter.
is that we
Very serious.
consider the matter of climate urgency as a part of the workshop in regard to the suite of documents in relation to climate change. Full stop.
Excellent.
Very short, gets rid of all this long-winded stuff.
Okay. Before we go back into open council, Are we all good to go back? No one else wants
No,
to say anything?
I would like
Yes.
to say something.
Madam Mayor, my
Because-
light was on second,
So,
so I'm not trying to.
If we go back into open council, I can get a process.
See, light.
Move back into open council.
Do I have a seconder to go back into open council?
Second that.
Okay, we're back in open council.
all right.
Who stays? Okay, I know Anthony had his line on first. I need before I take yours, I need a seconder.
I've got somewhere to be by
Go, sure.
12 o'clock.
While we're getting this up,
Madam Mayor, is there any chance I could say? I'm not
Yes.
leaving, I guarantee you. You might want to get rid of me, but I'm not leaving.
Councillor Patterson.
Madam Mayor, this is something this issue which everyone out in our community has a different view on. That's right. Everyone. We need to be open and mindful of that issue. To be shut down continuously when you make any question of the issue of climate change or climate emergency is not helpful for democracy.
Here.
So I, as a councillor, wish to support Councillor Saul's notice of motion with an amendment to number 2. The amendment to number 2 is that this does not come back to council until after our next, what do we call it?
Workshop.
The workshop. And then that, if it comes back 10 times afterwards, well, we'll deal with it then. But my issue with this notice of motion at the moment, not the one that Councillor Saw's got in front of us, but the one Councillor Horville has got, is it is just coming back repeatedly when we have already set the time frame and the meeting for this to be dealt with, and we'll be dealing with it as a council in a democratic way, where we will have speakers for and we'll have speakers against, and we'll have ideas from everyone, and especially the General Manager, which I want to hear more of his ideas of around this issue. So I see no problem with passing Councillor Horville's notice of motion with that change to number 2. Pardon?
I thank you for the
Sorry.
support. Sorry.
Okay, it's the climate change, it's getting to me.
Sorry, we're confused by what.
Anyway, so
I'm going to take
yeah.
We're still in workshop. Councillor.
Are we still in workshop? Oh, I'm probably not.
We
allowed to
didn't
speak
vote,
then.
Madam Mayor.
We didn't vote.
We did vote, and I voted against.
So I'd like to quickly speak in workshop, if I may, Madam Mayor.
Okay, we're still in work. We didn't. I'll put the vote.
I didn't vote to come out of workshop.
No one voted to go out of workshop. So we're still in workshop.
We didn't get a
No, it isn't.
Okay, so we're still in
Probably because
workshop.
Bruce spat the dummy.
He was under pressure of time. He was under pressure of time. So, Councillor Williams.
I ain't got second.
I know. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councillor Patterson just completely contradicted everything he said in the first sentence to what he said just after that. He said that we can't shut down the public for having different views, and then he supports shutting down a different view there. Anyway, that doesn't matter. What I'm just trying to say is that I don't disagree that we may be in a emergency, or there's issues of climate change out there. I don't understand that enough, and I'm sure every single person here probably doesn't understand it enough to make a decision like that just yet. But I just think we're putting the cart before the horse. We need the policy before we can make that decision. Yeah, and we need the workshop to create that policy. So I would be supportive of the not the alternate motion, but the amended motion, that it not be brought back until after the workshop.
Okay.
But it shouldn't stop us from discussing that at the workshop.
Just a point of clarification. Can I seek a point of clarification? I think where we're going around in circles and the words aren't up there, so I can't actually see what we're talking to. But I think the point here is about notices of motion keep coming back that are the same thing that we voted against, and that's frustrating councillors in general. So obviously the point...
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
No. And your point of order is?
That a misstatement of fact. there has been no vote on climate emergency because it lapsed twice. We haven't had a vote on it.
That was a vote.
Well, the point is there doesn't appear to be an appetite among councillors for this issue to declare a climate emergency. So the part I agree with the point 2 is to let us just have the workshop, then we can discuss any outcomes of the workshop. But I also take on board what the General Manager is trying to say, that we need to be able to discuss climate emergency or whatever frame of words you want to use to set the scene as part of our workshop. Where I think point 2 we're having a difficulty is what we're really trying to say, or what I think I'm trying to say as a councillor is, I don't want to see this notice of motion come back again in this format or any other type of format with some changes until we've had a workshop. I don't want to see council, as in the organisation, not allowed to discuss climate emergency as part of workshop or preparations for the workshop. And I think that's why we're having a difficulty with getting the words right in part 2. What I would like to see is that we don't see another notice of motion come back again on this until after we've had a workshop. I don't want to preclude or stop our organisation from being able to discuss climate emergency or whatever other term or phrase you want as part of the preparation and outcomes potentially of a workshop of councillors. The reason I think the workshop is so important is that we're representing the whole of the community, and our community has diverse views on this, just like we as councillors do, and we're reflective of our community. And within our community we'll have everything from absolute climate believers and at one end of the scale, and then we will have everything down to climate deniers. And we need to bring our community as a whole, and particularly the moderates in our community, along for a discussion so that their council is being responsible. And this is about having a moderate, appropriate response that council can initiate. We're a tiny little footprint in a global situation, and we need to be aware of what we can and can't do and what our resources are. So I'm certainly not saying or denying that there are climate change, whatever word you want to use out there, is occurring. But the point of this motion is to reiterate that we want our workshop, that's important, that we need to have an opportunity as a council, as a group of councillors, to work together to find a way forward, and that number 2, we don't want to see another notice of motion on this at the next meeting, repeating this discussion again until we've had a workshop when we can work our way through it. And that's what I believe we're trying to get to in the words. Now, if those words don't say that, I believe that's our intention.
Can it say for point 2 that climate change not be considered again, because that could be interpreted as another notice of motion could come to next month's meeting, but it doesn't use the term climate. Sorry, Pat. It could come to the next meeting not using climate emergency, but using another term. Can we just, like as Councillor McGinn said, the intent is for us not to talk about climate change, not to preempt anything until after we've had the workshop.
Can I suggest some wording based on all that discussion? Is the point 2 we simply read that that the matter of climate emergency be considered at the climate change workshop, full stop. And the reason I say that is the actual resolution from the March meeting actually requires us to bring a report back after that workshop, which would start to deal with your actions and all those sorts of things at all. So basically, it will be added to that long list of climate change, sustainable living, emissions reduction, in that workshop format. And that's where you'll actually consider it.
If we do that, though, then we're actually saying that we are going to consider climate emergency again after the workshop. If you have those...
No, that would depend on... No, you consider it in the workshop, and council will determine in that workshop whether they believe there is an emergency or not. And if you don't, then that would be articulated in some way. And if you do, that would be articulated in some way. But it leaves you to the time to actually discuss that in a conducive format in a workshop in the bigger context of everything around climate change that you outlined in that March resolution.
I disagree, because point 2 would say that this matter, climate emergency, be considered again after the workshop. That means we will be considering climate emergency again after the workshop as a special separate. So you could bring up any.
Yeah, that's not what I said. What I said, this matter of climate emergency be considered in the workshop, full stop.
In the workshop. Okay.
But it doesn't stop the intention of it
Let's see it on
potentially
the
coming
screen so I
back.
can-
We understand the workshop may be in August, is that correct?
Correct.
So we've still got June and July.
For this, and this is what we were trying to alleviate. So these words
And I
are
think
right.
knowing that this has come now twice to council in this basic format, given if there's a resolution along these lines again today in council's March resolution, if I received another notice of motion, I would use my discretion not to allow it, because it would actually be, council's clearly indicated its intention about how to deal with this. So I wouldn't actually put another notice of motion on the agenda if it came in any sort of similar format.
We move back into open council.
Madam Mayor, I've had my light on.
I take Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to do a quick survey for the question to all my fellow councillors. On page 61, I put up a link to a news broadcast that went for just
Order.
over-
We're out of order.
I'm not answering questions.
I'm asking a question of all my councillors, Madam Mayor.
And it's been ruled out of order because I think the councillors can see where that's going, and they believe, is this correct? Yes. That it's irrelevant to the debate around whether we put this in or we put it out of the motion.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. I hadn't even finished my question and you've ruled it out of order. It's a very simple question.
Which is?
On page 61, I put a link.
Yes.
Can I finish without being
We
interrupted,
don't have to
please?
answer it.
You don't have to answer it. This is true. I put a link to a CNN news broadcast. How many of my fellow councillors watched that 2-minute broadcast?
Thank you, councillors. Do I have a mover?
No one.
Do I have a mover to move back into open council?
Move that way.
Thank you, councillor. You happy? Councillor Shields, councillor McGinn. Okay, we're back in open council. So we've got
They need to vote.
to move back into open council. All in favour? We're back in open council. We have a recommendation that was moved by Councillor Saul, seconded by Councillor McGinn. We've workshopped it. Are you prepared to change? And then we had an amendment by Councillor Shields, which we discussed in workshop. Councillor, are you prepared to adjust your?
I'm reluctant to, Madam Mayor, but I think we may have to get something forward.
Okay, so councillor, you're happy to do that. Are you happy to? You're happy? Okay, so we have a recommendation that the climate change policy and the response to climate change to be addressed in the workshop, and that the matter of climate emergency be considered in that workshop. I'm going to put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation, all against the recommendation. The recommendation has been carried. Thank you, councillors. We now go to councillor questions. Councillor Baxter.
2 questions, Madam Chair. Can we have a report from our delegate on the Breaking the Cycle Committee showing outcomes achieved and plans underway? And secondly, could we get a report on who received grants from the mayoral fund in this financial year and the total amount of funding granted to the community by the mayor from her mayoral allowance? Thank you.
No questions.
No question. You finished? Councillor.
No questions.
Councillor Horval.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have 3 questions and I've got a typo. I've already sent it through. In the first one, what actions have already been taken by Council to address climate change? Second one, should any agreement entered into by Council and another entity have an expectation that both parties would comply with all sections of the agreement? Finally, What is the situation with the investigation of the cost of removal and site remediation? I'll say that again. What are the situation with the investigation of the cost of removal and site remediation of the fueling system now redundant at Kempsey Airport?
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Two questions. Question one being corner River Street, Elbow Street roadworks. Can council look at landscaping the work area? Question two, could we have an update on the buffer zone around the bat colony at the Kempsey Traffic Bridge where that works are up to? Thank you.
Councillor Saul.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Two small questions. Can we please have a start date given for the amenities block at the Flemington boat ramp? And Flemington. And a start date for the Clyde Street Mall amenities block, please.
Councillor William. Councillor McGinn. Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Do I have a move into confidential?
Move that way.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Saul, seconded by Councillor Shields. All in favour of moving into confidential. Thank you. We now have to clear the gallery. Thank you. which is the trust meeting. Oh, yes, we closed the meeting at 11:50. So we now are in the meeting of the Reserve Trust.
I move that way, Madam Mayor.
We need apologies. I don't know that we had an apology from Councillor Councillor Morris.
He had places to be, he said.
He needed to be gone by 12 o'clock, I think. Oh, before 12 o'clock he had to be gone by 11, I think. Yeah.
Did you get the minutes for this or the
So I don't know whether it's an apology or not. 2 declarations of interest. No declarations of interest. 3, there's a staff report. It is lease renewal of Stewart's Point Preschooling. Thank you, Councillor Saul. Thank you, Councillor Shields. No debate. There is a question. Councillor Horval.
Madam Mayor, I've missed the message that it was in Docs on Tap, so I basically don't know what it's about, and I haven't read it, so I will just refrain from voting, I guess.
I can tell you what the recommendation is, and I will read it so that you are aware. That the leases be renewed for a period of 5 years with commencing annual rental for each lease set at the statutory minimum prescribed in the Crown Lands Management Regulation 2018, that the lease be signed by the Reserve Trust. I'll just get the Director to give you a brief.
If you could. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. It's just a new lease for Stewart's Point preschool. It's on 2 parcels of land, so there's 2 leases. That's why there's 2 rather than just the one. It's for a period of 5 years, just sort of no real changes in terms of the current operation, so it's fairly straightforward, I would have thought.
Is there a CPI increase in it?
It's, as per the recommendation, it's just a statutory minimum under the regulations, the Crown Land Management Regulation.
I put the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation, all against. It's been carried. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. That concludes the meeting of the Trust. And just before we go, I think there's a couple